Hello, statistics student. In this video, we're going to cover chapter 1.1. We'll talk about some key terms, talk about what statistic is about, what is the purpose of studying statistics, and also some examples. So first is defining what statistics is. Here, I have it copy from the textbook. We're using Openstax textbook, which you can access online. So in the textbook, it mentioned that statistics is the science of collecting, analyzing, interpreting, and presenting data. So it is a branch of science that details out, we call it a science because the procedures that they introduce or the method they introduce are all based on sound mathematical models, and it's backed by math for accurate interpretation. So there are two main branches of statistics. One is called descriptive statistics. The main goal is for organizing and summarizing data, meaning presenting the data that they collect. The second one is called inferential statistic is you get data, but then you will draw conclusion from it. You might make decision based on the data that you have. So why should we study statistics as a statistical student? I think there will be three main reason why studying statistics is good for you, other than satisfying your um, major requirement or transfer requirement or whatever. First is you will be able to read and understand statistical studies, especially those studies that you will come across when you are working in your field after you graduate. If you're nursing students, you may be study for new, care procedure, medical the method, and a lot of times the studies are statistical study. If you are a business major, you may be studying studies on how your customer behave, how the market is moving, or anything that relates to the field of work that you're working on. So being able to understand statistical study, understand the vocabulary, the symbols and concepts is important for your future work. Deeper still, if you want to, you can actually use whatever that you have learned in this course to conduct research in your field. You should be able to plan experiments, plan procedures that can collect data, summarize data, and use it for making decision. And lastly, by understanding data better, you become a better consumer and citizens. So this course is called Introductory Statistics as well as Probability. So what is probability to do with statistical study? There is a particular rule in probability that we use in statistics that would help us to make conclusion or to understand how a particular event is significant or not. Now, in statistics, the word significant is not the English, does not carry the English meaning of very important. When we say significant, very often we say, wow, that is a very important event. But in probability, significance means it has a low chance of happening, such as you win a lottery, right? So in statistics, we say anything that is lower than, or in general, any chance of happening lower than 5% is described as significant. So what happened is there are a lot of cases where things around us happens in random. Some happen more, some has a higher chance of happening, some event has lower chance of happening. So significant is something that has very low chance of happening, but from a statistician's point of view, those should not happen. And if it happens, some of our assumption may be incorrect. So right now, I think in this particular chapter, you just need to know that statisticians look at probability differently. They classify some event that has very low chance of happening as statistical significant. So an event, remember, has an event that has very low chance, that has lower than 5%, at 5% or lower, is called statistical significant. And we actually, we have a terms for it. We call it a rare event rule. Okay, we use rare event rule to draw conclusions from data, and we'll explain that later as we're getting closer and closer to having to make conclusions about data. And then the rest of 1.1 is about introducing some key terms. So especially 6 terms that we have. I have 6 terms that I'm planning to introduce: population, sample. I group these together because they are related, but they have their own differences. Parameter and statistic. Here, statistic shows up again. Okay. In this case, it is a term, not a branch of study. The last 2 terms are variable and data. Now, before I go into these 6 terms, I want to show a statistical articles to you. So this article is one that is published online in the Gallup website. Gallup is a company that conduct research for other company, and one of the research that they do, one of the statistical study that they do during August, I think in July, they do the study in July, and they publish the finding in August, is the headline, that's what they say: 1 in 3 Americans would not get COVID-19 vaccine. So everybody knows that the race is on getting the vaccine now and getting vaccinated so that we will be protected from getting the COVID-19 virus. But Gallup conducted study and find that around 33% of Americans would not get the vaccine, even if it's available. Now, this headline is very bold. It say 1 in 3 Americans, as if they have interviewed all of Americans. But did they interview you? You live in America. You're an American. I'm an American. But Gallup never asked me. How dare they make this conclusion? So what happened is, if you look at the articles in more details, so here they say the results are based on July 20 to August 2 polling in Gallup's COVID-19 tracking survey conducted with members of the Gallup probability-based panel. So they have a group of people that they I don't know if they hired, that they pick. They call it a panel, and then they ask them. They ask this selected group of people, and then they come up with these numbers. So actually, I go online because I did not do copy the sample method, the sampling method, how they conduct data here. So I copy the link, and then I go online to look at the survey methods. So look at this. The results of this Gallup poll are based on self-administered web survey conducted July 20th to August 2 with a random sample of 7,632 adults aged 18 and older who are members of the Gallup panel. So they have a certain group of people that they have pre-selected as a panel. They put the survey online, and they end up having 7,632 adults answer the question. Out of these 7,632 adults, 1/3 of them say that they would not get the COVID-19 vaccine. But notice how Gallup posed it. They did not say 1 in 3 of the Gallup panel would not get COVID-19. They boldly say that 1 in 3, not 1 in 10, 1 in 3, 1 in 3 Americans would not get. So they extend the results from the panels, from the 7,000 people, to all of American. So this is the power of a statistical study. Although they only talk to 7,000 people, America had, millions of people living here. But out of the 7,000, they are boldly enough to say that is enough to conclude that 1 in 3, the same percentage of Americans will not get the vaccine. So let's go back to our notes. So you see how a typical statistical study is like this. A study usually would conduct a survey. They will have a target population that they want to know. In the previous example, the target population is all of American. And then they would have a sample. Sample are the one that they collect data. It's a subset of the larger population. So to gain information about the populations. So population is the target group that they want to study. It doesn't have to be people. Population is an English word. So very often it is people, but it could be, you could be studying houses. You could be studying animals. So those are the population. Sample is a subset of the larger population. You do a survey or you do some kind of measurement of this sample so that you can know information about the population. You extend this finding that you have in the sample to the population. If you sometimes we would actually be able to collect all data from the populations. We call this a census. A census is a collection of data from every member of the population. That is not a statistical study. It's a data collection or it's a census. Okay, so understand these two words. Population is the target group. You can define your target group. But in the previous study, Gallup was targeting all of Americans. Okay, sample is a subset. Okay, of course, not all samples are good. In the survey method, they particularly say a random sample. Okay, so we will talk about what is a random sample, but basically, sample has to be collected in such a way that is useful. It must for samples to be useful for estimating the corresponding parameters. The sample must be representative. Okay, so the two other terms that we want to do is parameter versus statistics. So these two are very common English word. Well, statistic is actually the name of the branch of study that we are doing. Parameter is a numerical characteristic of the populations. So 1/3 of all American, this 1/3 or 33% is a parameter of the population. Statistic is the same characteristic of a sample, but you collect it from the sample. So 33% is the statistics because you calculate it from the sample. Okay, so and then the last two is variable versus data. Variable is the characteristics that you are collecting, or a types of is a description of the measurement that you're collecting from the population. Data is the actual data of the variable. So when we say data, we are talking about the actual data that you're collecting. For variable is the name. Okay, so we will talk about we will have more example in the second videos on these 6 terms. But the important things to know is if you are to use your sample statistics to predict or to estimate parameter, this sample must be a representative sample. And one way for a representative sample is a random sample. Okay, so we'll go through more of these 6 terms and also how to do random sample later on.